Jill Michelle Williams is a television producer and writer with experience across broadcast, streaming, and cable networks, creating content in true crime, lifestyle, and more. She has served on film festival panels, lectured at universities, and even judged the Emmys. Starting her career in news, Jill moved to Los Angeles to pursue entertainment. She worked her way up the production ladder, gaining experience in all stages, from development to post. As a development consultant, she creates concepts in various genres. Her drive for ethical true crime productions, however, sets her apart from many. This is True Crime in Hollywood, Jill's personal tale. All right, so I am sitting down today with Miss Jill. How are you, Jill?
I am doing very well, thank you.
Good. So, one of the things that, we immediately started talking about was your childhood when we first connected. And you mentioned that you grew up in Ohio. And one of the cases that really stuck with you was Jeffrey Dahmer. And this was at a young age. Can you talk to me about that?
Sure. First of all, Dahmer was originally from Ohio,
Hmm.
but I remember watching the news and seeing one of the victims' family members just having an emotional break in the courtroom. And she was the one, you know her name, but she was the one that was like, Jeffrey, I hate you, and like spewed some expletives, and deputies had to come over, and it was very emotional. And seeing him just kind of sit there, it was a very impactful moment that I think if anyone saw it, it just doesn't, it's like forever ingrained in your brain.
That is Rita Isbell, and we just finished her interview the other day.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yes, yes, but very much so. And I think hearing your perspective of that and that has stuck with you is actually really impactful. And, we obviously talked about that as well. And so, how did that, kind of transition to I don't want to jump directly to your work today, but like, did you then kind of start paying attention to crimes happening around you? Was it kind of like this thing in the back of your mind? How did that kind of stay with you?
I think I have always been kind of aware of crime and my surroundings. I grew up being taught to have a lot of common sense. It
Yeah.
was just really drilled into me. And it was for protection,
Yeah.
because not everybody in this world is out to wish you well and give you a pat on the back.
Right.
It's not the way the world works. Um, and I think I've always been a bit of an intuitive and an empathetic human being.
Yeah. So from there, then how did you get your start in the industry and then getting right into the true crime genre?
That's a good story. I went to Arizona State University,
Mm,
and then within ASU, I got into the Walter Cronkite School, which was a top 10 school for
wow.
journalism,
Wow.
particularly in broadcast journalism. And then I was awarded a paid internship working for a radio news outlet. And
Mm,
ironically, I covered a presidential election.
wow.
And the things that I observed happening went against everything I was taught in college. Uh,
Mm,
in college, we were taught things like if you misspell a proper name, it was an automatic fail. Like there
yeah.
was like, no, that's it. Like it's just lazy, it's sloppy, you're done. Um, there was no staging of the news. There was no like opinions. It was like very very fact based. And this particular election, I saw newscasters, taking, I think it was there was a Green Party at that time, and they were doing a march and they had a coffin. And this news producer, I think, had them stop and stand and gather them to stand and chant. And I remember thinking, that's not how this is supposed to work.
Mhm.
And I just took it so seriously that I was like, I don't think this industry is for me. And this
Mm.
was the year with the Chads, the hanging Chads, the pregnant Chads, the missing rider truck in Florida. And there were
Wow.
announcements like every other day about who was president. And it just kind of did me in.
Yeah.
So I moved to LA and got a job at E Entertainment Television. And
Wow.
then slowly started doing like E True Hollywood Story,
Hmm.
which in E True Hollywood Story, there's a lot of crime. And it just kind of morphed into crime. My career just kind of morphed into the true crime genre.
Are there any episodes that you did on this particular series that really stuck out to you?
There was one in particular with a certain celebrity, and it wasn't so much that we approached it as crime. It was that series was really about digging in to kind of understand the genesis of an actor and their trajectory, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this one celebrity wound up famous actress, mom, a famous actress, wound up moving in with her famous actor boyfriend.
Yeah.
She was 14 years old. I
Wow.
remember hearing reports that she could have been 13.
Wow.
And but we didn't approach it like, oh, this was crime. But I mean, she even did it in an interview where she said she was 14 when she moved in with him.
Wow. Wow. That's wild. And there's a lot, I know Brooke Shields, she did her documentary and, and like learning those things about Hollywood. And I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but yeah, but I could see how that would affect you and kind of stick with you. So yeah, thank you for
I
sharing
mean,
that.
just because I feel like it's important to say, just because no one found out doesn't make it not illegal.
Yes, right, right. Absolutely. So at what point did that then transition to like now you're working with actual, crime stories and victims and trauma survivors? When did that transition happen?
I believe it was a clip show series, and one of the stories was Dahmer, ironically.
Wow.
But it was
Okay.
specifically about killers, serial killers.
Hmm. Wow. How did you know that was the job for you at that point?
One, I think it's interesting. Two, as a storyteller, I am a particularly voracious researcher.
Mm,
And I try to make sure that there are new details and information revealed. So I knew that with a story like Dahmer, even though it's been told over and over and over and over again, that I would be able to find nuggets that hadn't ever been revealed uh,
yeah.
to explore.
Wow. Yeah. That's great. And I'm glad that you did that and knowing that you did that because that is important, especially as someone who has worked very extensively with Bundy. I mean, it is the same thought process where it's just the same regurgitated information. So I applaud you for digging deeper and trying to find those nuggets, like you said. Yeah.
And it's even worth noting, and you and I talked about this, that like one of those nuggets is, going back to that moment in the courtroom
Yeah.
that part of the reason Dahmer was just sitting there and was so numb is because he wasn't wearing his glasses.
Mm,
But you see him with those aviator framed glasses every other time. And it
right.
was intentional that he did not wear his glasses in the courtroom because he literally physically did not want to see.
I don't think I really even knew that. So, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Something that you mentioned, though, in our first conversation, you stated there is this responsibility when it comes to true crime storytelling. Can you expand on that?
I think there's a huge responsibility. There's a responsibility to the victim and to their families.
Yeah.
I think that I have been on teams where they have started to attempt to treat the families like it was a baking show. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. Like, I am the point of contact. I will handle everything. It's too much. It's asking, it's asking families who are, for the most part, predominantly poor,
Yeah. Yeah.
middle class at like best in a lot of these situations, to relive the worst day of their life again.
Yeah.
And these people are being paid a few $1,000s for their photographs.
Yeah.
And so it is important to be gentle and kind and considerate and to help walk them through the process of making a show so
Right.
that they know what to expect and you're not asking for too much.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's important because I think oftentimes it's not explained to them. And so this process is foreign unless, they have been doing the media for, numerous years. And that's the other thing too, is that these families are being contacted relentlessly and consistently. So with that being said, when these families are contacted, what is something that you have done to make sure that one, you're building that trust with them, but just like you said, you're giving them this landscape of how this works. What do you hope that, any producers that are listening, what that takeaway should be if they're not doing that already?
But you're asking a lot of these people.
Yeah.
You're asking so much of these people to relive the worst, most traumatic time in their entire lives for a few $1,000s so that the production company, the network can make a hell of a lot of money on the backs of their first person stories. And
Yeah.
that we as human beings, as storytellers, owe it to them and owe it to ourselves just to be kind and thoughtful.
Yeah. Love that. Now, one of the things that you said to me that has stuck with me, you said that you feel like this work doesn't necessarily personally affect you in the sense of like secondhand trauma. Can you talk to me about that?
I think that I feel such a sense of, I don't want to call it duty, but a drive to get it right
Yeah.
that um it just doesn't affect me in some kind of like, oh, I need therapy kind of way. I look at it as one thing that I think is really, really important that people also don't touch on when it comes to crime, right? Is that not only are we representing the victim, not only are we representing the victim's families, we are representing the good apples in law enforcement. We are
Hmm.
representing the guys that got creative and went the extra mile to figure out what happened to these people.
Right.
That's what we're figuring, and so I think when you have that type of mindset that's about everyone else,
Hmm.
it's not about you. Like
Hmm.
it's not about me.
Hmm.
It's about everyone else and getting the story right.
But you and I both know that there's always so much more to the story than what is actually produced out there. So knowing that to get these stories correct, you're listening to not just, the victims' families, you're listening to the law enforcement, you're going through these documents, we get these FOIA requests and all of that too. So there is that massive responsibility, like you said, to make sure that you are, checking these marks, but you're also in turn doing it to, make sure that we're hitting on story beats. We've got outlines, we've got marching orders, from the network, all of that. So, with that being said, you have held different producing credits. Is there a particular position that you prefer when it comes to true crime?
I mean, my preferred position overall is I enjoy being the number two. I can
Mm,
because I started out at the bottom, as an assistant, I can literally do any job.
mhm,
And I feel like as you climb the ladder, your job is not just story, it's logistics, it's getting things right, it's being confident in yourself, in your team, and also picking up the slack
mm,
and knowing, like reading releases to be like, this release is not worded the way it should be worded to protect the people who are signing it. I like being in a number two position because the people above you and the people below you, you have their ear. You have everyone's
yeah.
ear.
Is there any particular series that has stuck with you or one that you're very proud of?
I mean, I think I'm proud of all of them, really. I mean, there's a couple I'm like really proud of for different reasons. The last show I did was on exonerees.
Okay.
And so I'm very proud of that limited series because it shined a light on the wrongfully convicted and what they go through once they're released.
Right.
Because when people are wrongfully convicted of a crime, it's not like here's $40
Yeah.
and a parole officer, see you later, which
Mhm.
is roughly what, when someone has served their sentence and they get out, they get a parole officer. They usually get a little bit of cash. These guys don't get a parole officer. They get no cash. They're lucky if somebody says sorry.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then they have to go through the process on their own of figuring out how to go after the city, how to go after the state to be compensated for their years behind bars.
Hmm.
And it is a long, drawn out, complicated process.
Right.
So that one was particularly illuminating.
Yeah. What was that series?
That was one that was on We, and it did not get picked up, which I'm not surprised because the amount of filming over an extended period of time that is required, it's not feasible just to like bring a team on for it.
Wow. That's wild, actually, to learn all that. So was it like you never got to the point of filming and it was just more like research that you did and meeting with these people?
So we put 3 episodes together.
Okay.
Um, but it was very strategic filming over a period of time.
Yeah.
And by the time I had come on, a ton of filming had already happened just in like one-off days,
Right.
if
Wow.
that makes sense.
Yeah. And the other component too with that is like how they're integrating into society if they have been behind bars for so long. I
They
mean,
need family and
yeah,
friends and people to help them in the beginning.
yeah,
They have to, or they're not going to make it. And, that's where the whole like rate of recidivism comes
yeah,
into play. So
right.
that series was particularly impactful and is, crime on, a different level.
Yeah,
It's a
right.
different side of crime.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
now we're seeing this true crime genre splinter off into all these micro genres.
correct.
The con crime is really huge.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to see more exoneree projects. Um, there was the whole like inventing Anna, Tinder swindler, like
The
that's
con artists. Yeah,
now
yeah,
there's all these like, you know, dating ones or roommate ones, or there's so many, it's like splintering off,
yeah.
which is really interesting.
Yeah. And it's like the evolution of where this storytelling has gone because like you said, I mean, again, as somebody who watched E True Hollywood Story pretty consistently as a young teen, I mean, from there to where we're at today, just like you said, it is splintering off. There are like, different avenues of these crimes, if you will. So, yeah, that's really interesting. I would love to hear your thoughts too about, also what we are seeing in terms of like seeing some of these series, especially scripted. So depicting now actual people, actual crimes, but now we're also seeing the repercussions of that and people actually litigating, against some of these networks. What are your thoughts on that, especially since you feel so strongly, about having that respect when it comes to true crime storytelling?
I have a lot to say about Baby Reindeer. I have a lot to say about Baby Reindeer. The problem with Baby Reindeer is it all comes down to that title card.
Mm,
This is a true story. I think that's what it said. It did not say based on. I believe the words were this is a true story.
hmm.
First of all, anything scripted, it's not a true story.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Yep.
That's number one. Then you get to, if you look at the person, the woman who people have discovered and are saying this is the actual woman who is behind the stalking, and do a side by side photo comparison with the actress who played her, there's just no mistaking that it was intentional. It was not an accident.
Yeah.
And she, in my opinion, she absolutely has a lawsuit. I think it's clear that Netflix plays fast and loose with their legal department. I think it set a really poor precedent. And I think that they put Richard Gadd in a terrible situation
Mm,
with
yeah.
that. And it's all because of that title card.
Yeah. To go back a little bit even before Baby Reindeer, because I addressed this with Rita in her episode, was that Ryan Murphy then did the Dahmer series, which went on to win awards. But Rita says, verbatim, everything I said was said by this actor depicting me, but I was never notified. I was never consulted with. I didn't receive any money for that. What do you think about now on that side of it, especially because that was so monumental in your life watching that?
Okay, so my answer is twofold here. So there's law
Hmm.
and then there's ethics, right?
Yep. Yep.
The law says that if a crime and evidence, photographs, so on and so forth, were tried in a public trial, they're free to use.
Mm-hmm.
They're absolutely free to use. That includes testimony. Like I said, photographs. It's why, the Polaroids are out there. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
is it morally and ethically the right thing to do? I mean, I think we all know the answer to that.
Yeah.
The law also has this son of Sam law that says that serial killers or killers, who become quote unquote famous, that they cannot make money off their crimes, right?
Right. Yep. Yep.
And so, I mean, it's just such a I don't even know what to say about people who just don't give others the courtesy of a heads up. It's a simple thing to do.
Yeah.
It can really be done probably in under 2 weeks' time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really easy thing to do just to be respectful to people. Because again, it's a terrible period in these people's lives that they probably think about every single day, every day.
Yep. Yep.
And it's a
Very.
really easy thing to do just to reach out to someone. And even if you say, hey, I would like to give you a heads up that we are in production on a Jeffrey Dahmer story and we will have an actor playing you.
Yeah.
It doesn't even mean that you have to give someone creative control. People always ask for creative control, they never get it. But
Mm-hmm.
just giving someone the courtesy of a heads up, I think, goes a long way.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. So, with that being said, what do you hope to see evolve regarding true crime and Hollywood, especially for producers who are producing such heavy content, one, but breaking stories that involve such severe trauma?
I mean, I think a trend that I'm seeing that is really disturbing to me are these keyboard investigators, you know. It's and
Yes.
with YouTube, they're coming out and they're like, I watched the surveillance video and this car drove by or this happened. And this is not a game of Clue. These
Yes.
are real people.
Yep.
And I want to caution those individuals that you are not law enforcement
Hmm.
and it's not okay to name people that you think. And eventually they're going to learn once they're slapped with lawsuits. And that will happen. It is the entire reason why we no longer refer to individuals as suspects,
Yeah.
but rather as person of interest.
Right. Right.
So, where I see this all going, as far as quote unquote Hollywood, and now that YouTube is the biggest streamer,
Yeah.
there's going to be more and more and more of these people starting YouTube channels. And the difference between that type of quote unquote crime content and what we produce is we do have a legal team
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we have to provide, annotated scripts that say, here is where I got this information. And it cannot be from Wikipedia. It
Exactly.
has to be normally two citations. Ideally, you have been able to FOIA the court records,
Mm.
and then you only need one because you're like, it was in the court records. Like this is what happened. Or I interviewed the ADA and the ADA said it in their interview.
Right.
The people on YouTube aren't going through those types of checks and balances. And so it's not all true information. And just, I'll give you an example, just as like a wild juxtaposition. You've got Netflix as the network, right? Who's throwing up a title card on a scripted series saying this is a true story. I did a show on BTK and we shot drone footage in Wichita, Kansas over neighborhoods,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And we were told from our business and legal department. Now, this is a very strict production company and UK network that we could not show drone footage of backyards because it is technically private space. We
Yeah.
could show it over streets, but
Hmm.
not backyards.
Yeah.
So we go through all this rigorous checks and balances. And as a producer, it's just things that you tend to learn and understand. And you know, like, okay, the law says this.
Hmm.
This is what I can do. And I see this as a growing trend that's problematic.
Thank you. I don't think I've had anyone talk about that just yet on this podcast because you're so right. I think that's the other thing that, anyone who's listening, who watches these types of unscripted series, there is this rigorous legal process along the whole way. Even when I'm down to pitching, an episode, that still has to go through legal. So just to give that context that you are absolutely right, because oftentimes these YouTubers are just pulling, here's a People magazine article, here's a local one over here. And as we know, the inaccuracies that can come out of those on top of the trauma survivors that I've interviewed have said there are inaccuracies in these things too. But even with drone footage, I mean, I've had producing positions where I have to get the licensing, I have to get the approval, I have to get what the requirements are for every single little place we are trying to put that drone up. So thank you for sharing that because that is very big and a big part of our job. So, yeah, thank you for expanding on that. So, now what is the most rewarding aspect of your job, but equally the biggest challenge?
Once it airs,
Yeah,
once
yeah.
the show airs, I reach out to everyone involved. I let them know when it's airing. And for the family, I usually tell them this is when it's airing. I don't recommend that you watch it, but if you do want to watch it, please, please, please do not watch it alone.
Mm.
And if they do watch it, it's waiting to hear if they're okay with it.
Yeah. One of the last questions I have for you, what advice would you give someone looking to break into true crime producing?
If you're looking to break into true crime producing, it's so much more than just reading books and reading news clips. You have to be familiar with laws and not just the law of where you live. It's the law. You have to be fast at learning laws. You have to be comfortable on the phone. You have to be empathetic and you have to know how to communicate with law enforcement. You have to know how to file a FOIA request. You also have to know how, even though you filed a FOIA request, other avenues to get that information because there are other avenues to get that information faster,
Mhm.
especially when you have certain law enforcement individuals on board your show, like an ADA or a detective.
Mhm.
You can get the court records faster. When you get the court records, I did a show, the amount of information that was provided to me, I think it was 769 pages
Yep.
to go
Uh-huh.
through.
Mhm.
Plus, there were photographs. Plus there was video, and
Yeah.
you are going to see things that you cannot unsee,
Yep.
and you have to read everything. You need
Yep.
to read it all. And then you have to walk a fine line, because a lot of what you see on TV, that is not everything that happened.
Nope.
And there is a reason that we are not telling you everything that happened, because it doesn't matter. All that it's doing is it's gratuitous and it's unnecessary. And more than likely, the family doesn't know and they don't need to know. And so it is a massive responsibility. It is a massive amount of reading versus producing, again, like a baking show.
Amen. Amen to all of that. So these last few questions are really our listeners getting to know you. So, what's the most interesting thing you have read, watched, or listened to recently?
Honestly, you want me to like honestly answer this?
Yes.
So, in particular, I'm a little bit of a nerd and I like to read lawsuits.
Really?
And
Wow.
I read Cassie's lawsuit like pretty much immediately when it came out.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember reading it and being like, oh boy, because the
Yeah.
way it was written, when you go to a lawyer, you have a goal in mind.
Right.
I want to get money. I want to, get my house fixed by this from this contractor. This lawsuit was written to take him down. And
Wow.
I think another friend of mine, she's a journalist and she also read it. And I mean, a year ago, we were just like, oh, this is major. It's so major. So I think that's really interesting. I think, I think the amount once it goes to trial, once everything comes out about P. Diddy, Love, Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, like whatever we're supposed to call him, I think things will be coming out for a very long time about
Oh my
that
gosh.
case.
Yeah. Oh,
So that's something, I mean, I think like has been on my radar for quite a while.
some time. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That is and it's very interesting. I love to hear that even in your downtime, you're reading this because I do the same thing if I have access, especially if something comes out. So thank you for saying that. I truly appreciate that answer.
Did you
Now, I have not, but now that I know this, I mean, my time
read
is limited with a toddler, but I mean, knowing this, I absolutely will take a look into it now. So yeah.
You should read it, because even at the very top where it names him, it
Hmm.
doesn't just name Sean Combs. It
Right.
names Sean Combs Bad Boy Records. It names Revolt TV, every entity. And why
Wow.
did they do that? They did that to force him to step down. So you're diminishing a money supply.
Mm-hmm.
And
Hmm.
then when you read it, they name every hotel across the country where the freak offs happened. And I was like, oh, they're going for it. They are leaving a breadcrumb for the feds to reach out to.
Wow.
And now it's out there. It's out there. Like, of course,
Yeah.
he's going to settle it super fast, but it was too late. Like, the cat's out of the bag. It's so bananas. And like, she was dating some other rapper, and he had his car
Kid
blown
Cudi.
up in his driveway. I'm like, it's just like, it is bonkers.
Yeah.
And I the amount of celebrities involved in this, I think, is going to astonish a lot of people. I think that people will be surprised to learn that this monster was created all the way going back to Tupac and Biggie
Yeah.
and the whole incident with Shine and J Lo. and read it and then
Yeah.
email me what you think.
Okay. Yeah. Adding that to my list of things I need to read. So, real quick, I know you're in New York, and one of the my favorite things to do is to have people shout out a small business. If there's a restaurant, bookstore.
My favorite small business is owned by two of my favorite people. It is called Maison 10.
Mm,
Maison 10 is an art gallery event space. It
mm,
is on 29th Street between 5th and Broadway. And everything is centered on the number 10. So they have 10 categories. Uh,
wow.
when you make a purchase, 10% goes to a charity of your choice. And they really celebrate artists and do these Friday night art talks. And it's
Yeah.
just a very cool business.
Amazing. We'll definitely put up their information for in this podcast episode. Thank you so much. And last but not least, who's a hero of yours and why?
I mean, when I was little, I really liked Sandra Day O'Connor. She was the
Wow. Yeah.
first female Supreme Court justice.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I
Oh, I
just
love
really thought
that.
that was like pretty cool, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that answer. Well, Jill, this has been such an enlightening conversation. And like I said, I appreciate all of your perspectives and everything that you have shared. Truly, our first conversation that we had, it struck me because I was like, you have said so many things that is so truthful. So I appreciate all the work that you're doing and what you're doing on behalf of trauma survivors and the families. Just big ups to you for that. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Join me next week as I sit down with Megan Richter, who escaped a military reform school that was essentially a cult. She survived cancer, endured 3 spine surgeries, and had part of her skull removed. Megan is the founder of Meg's Law of Positivity, a movement that helps others find positivity and happiness while overcoming physical and emotional pain. Meg's story is one you don't want to miss. This is True Crime in Hollywood, a personal tale. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a review for the show. Thank you for listening. And as always, remember the victims and embrace the survivors.